Beginning in the 16th century, England began exerting control over parts of Ireland. Anti-Catholic laws were passed and Protestantism spread throughout the country. Over the next several hundred years, this religious sectarianism became more contentious, with political divisions being drawn between Protestants who were largely loyalists and Catholics who were largely nationalists. In 1800, the British and Irish parliaments passed the Acts of Union, which merged the countries to create the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. In an event known as the Easter Rising of 1916, a group known as the Irish Volunteers led an armed insurrection against Britain, who in turn executed 15 leaders of the movement. Britain's harsh response to the uprising led to an increase in support for Irish independence. The Irish Volunteer Group then became known as the Irish Republican Army, or IRA, and launched a 3-year guerrilla war against the British-controlled areas of Ireland. In December of 1921, England and Ireland entered into the Anglo-Irish Treaty, which created an independent Republic of Ireland. However, the treaty contained an opt-out clause for Northern Ireland, which remained part of the United Kingdom. In 1968, tensions began rising in Northern Ireland when Northern Irish Catholics accused the Royal Ulster Constabulary, a police force comprised primarily of Protestants, of police brutality and discrimination against Catholics.
By almost every measure, nationalists in Northern Ireland were second-class citizens in housing, jobs and politics.
I fought for 18 years in the army for liberty and freedom, but simply because I'm a Catholic I cannot get freedom.
Derry was the most blatant example of how Unionists kept nationalists out of power.
The total Unionist vote in Londonderry is 9,000. And these votes put a total of 12 members in the City Council. The total Nationalist vote is 14,000. And these votes put in 8 members. Now note the curious situation. Most of the voters in Londonderry are Nationalist, but the council is controlled by the Unionists.
The following year, a series of riots erupted in Northern Ireland. These riots are considered to be the beginning of the 30-year conflict known as the Troubles. In response to the violence, the British Army initiated Operation Banner, which was the longest continuous deployment in British military history, lasting from 1969 to 2007. Peace walls were erected in neighborhoods separating Catholic and Protestant communities. On January 30th, 1972, a day which would later be called Bloody Sunday, members of the British Army shot 26 unarmed civilians, killing 13 of them. This event dramatically increased the hostility between the Unionists and the British Army. The Provisional IRA, over the next 25 years, carried out thousands of bombings in Northern Ireland, England, West Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands. More than 3,500 people were killed during this time, with over 50% of the casualties being civilians. Despite the religious divide between Catholics and Protestants, the conflict had little to do with religion and had more to do with politics and culture. Serious political efforts to end the violence began in the late 1980s when several ceasefires were agreed upon, then broken. Finally, after 30 years of violence throughout Northern Ireland, a pair of agreements were signed. These treaties became known as the Good Friday Agreement or the Belfast Agreement, and were approved by voters on May 22, 1998. The first, known as the Multi-Party Agreement, was passed by voters in Northern Ireland. The second, known as the British-Irish Agreement, passed by voters in the Republic of Ireland. The Good Friday Agreement was an attempt to bring an end to the decades-long violence in Northern Ireland and focused on areas such as culture, civil rights, justice, and policing.
Good evening. A historic day at Stormont after 2 years of talks and after a generation of bloodshed and decades of division and acrimony, George Mitchell ushers in what the whole island hopes will be a new era of peace. An agreement that unites Loyalist and Republican, Unionist and Nationalist leaders in a wide-ranging historical accord.
The agreement included three main areas of concern, known as the Three Strands. Strand 1 focused on the democratic institutions of Northern Ireland and established two major political institutions, the Northern Ireland Assembly and the Northern Ireland Executive. This portion of the agreement created a power-sharing dynamic in Northern Ireland whereby the majority and minority parties both had a say in the political system.
The principle of consent is absolute and is throughout the agreement. And the breakthrough is that is now accepted by all, North and South. Also, those who believe in a united Ireland can make that case now by persuasion, not violence or threats.
Strand 2 created the North-South Ministerial Council, whose goal is to develop cooperation between the two regions in 12 areas of mutual interest, such as farming and health. Strand 3 created the British-Irish Intergovernmental Conference with the purpose of promoting cooperation between the UK and the Republic of Ireland and to resolve disagreements between the countries.
My ultimate political aspiration remains the coming together of all the people of Ireland, achieved peacefully and by consent. I value deeply the close relationship between the Irish government and the British government. But I look forward equally to a new era of friendship and reconciliation between Unionists and Nationalists, in which each tradition can learn truly the value of the other.
The current issue that is plaguing Ireland and Northern Ireland is Brexit. On June 23, 2016, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland left the European Union. However, the UK's exit from the European Union has caused strain on Britain, Northern Ireland, and Ireland. This strain is due to the fact that Northern Ireland is the only part of the UK that shares a land border with a country in the European Union. When the Brexit decision was reached, there were fears from countries in the European Union that the land border would become a backdoor or a loophole for companies to get goods into the EU without following the EU's very strict trade rules. As a result of the tension that arose after Brexit, the Republic of Ireland and the UK came to an agreement known as the Northern Ireland Protocol. So far, there have been two versions of the Northern Ireland Protocol. The first version avoided establishing a physical border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and this version was approved of by both the UK and the EU. However, pro-Brexit members of Parliament refused to ratify it. A second version of the Northern Ireland Protocol was brought by Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and this was ratified by Parliament. However, a new issue then arose. Unionists in Northern Ireland who wish to remain part of the United Kingdom hate the second version of the Northern Ireland Protocol.
We are clear that the protocol represents an existential threat to the Union and to the future of Northern Ireland within the United Kingdom.
The new protocol ostensibly created a sea border between the UK and Northern Ireland where a lot of paperwork is required in order to bring goods into Northern Ireland. Luckily for the Unionists in Northern Ireland, they now have a new bargaining chip. This new bargaining chip comes from the way the government in Northern Ireland works. For background, the Good Friday Agreement that was signed in 1998 included a power-sharing agreement in which the party holding the most seats in the National Ireland Assembly gets to appoint the First Minister. The party holding the second most seats gets to appoint a deputy. However, if the losing party does not appoint a deputy and the parties do not reach an agreement within 6 months, a new election must take place. As you can probably guess, this created Northern Ireland's most current issue. Right now, two of the major political parties within Northern Ireland are the Democratic Unionist Party, otherwise known as the DUP, and Sinn Féin, a nationalist party. In the most recent election, for the first time ever, a nationalist party, Sinn Féin, won more seats and was able to pick their first minister. In retaliation for their loss and the Second Northern Ireland Protocol, the DUP refuses to appoint a deputy until the Northern Ireland Protocol is rescinded and rewritten.
The Unionists won't restore devolution unless the Brexit Protocol is scrapped, and that's a problem for Rishi Sunak.
The time for talking is over. The Prime Minister on his first day in office said this: "I want to unite this nation, not just with words, but by actions." And what we are looking for now is the action to resolve the problems with the protocol and to restore Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom.
Since then, the date for picking a deputy, October 28th, has passed. The re-election for Northern Ireland was set to begin on December 15th, but it looks like it will take place in January now, as it has been pushed back.
I'm ashamed of this place, because unlike others in this chamber, I'm capable of shame.
There's an awful lot of anger in here today, and I can understand that, but I have to say the anger that was being shown in this floor today is absolutely nothing compared to the anger that is out on the streets.
There are current talks on potentially rewriting the Northern Ireland Protocol. This is due to the strain that it puts on Northern Ireland and due to the fact that the UK did not foresee the protocol being as heavily enforced as it has been.
I hoped and believed that our friends would not necessarily want to apply the protocol in quite the way that they have.
Some consumers within Northern Ireland are complaining about empty shelves and not being able to buy some products because of the protocol. Due to economic strain, some members of Parliament have suggested triggering Article 16 of the protocol. This would remove the sea border between Northern Ireland and Britain. However, experts warn that the EU could then take steps of its own and increase tariffs, effectively triggering a trade war. Right now, it seems that the UK Parliament seems committed to come up with a solution to the tension arising from the post-Brexit trade rules in Northern Ireland. When former Prime Minister Liz Truss met with the United States President Biden back in October of this year, she set a deadline for finding a solution to the post-Brexit trade rules. The deadline she set is April 10, 2023, which will mark the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement. Despite Liz Truss stepping down as Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, seems to be optimistic about Parliament coming up with a new solution. Additionally, Northern Ireland could hold the referendum when it looks as though the majority of its citizens would prefer to reunionize with the Republic of Ireland.
6 months after Sinn Féin's election victory, there's no devolved government at Stormont, the DUP boycotting it over the Brexit border in the Irish Sea. With the deadline having come and gone, the Northern Ireland Secretary appears to be stalling for time.
Now, I do not have to call an election immediately. I've listened to the party leaders and I'm going to talk to them all again next week, but I will be calling an election.
Waste of time.
Waste of time. Going to prove nothing.
It'll change nothing.
They're still going to fight with each other. The whole thing is a complete and utter nonsense.
Tell you the truth, I couldn't care less.
However, despite a growing number of unionists within the country, it seems unlikely that Northern Ireland would seek reunification anytime soon.
Next year is the centenary of the 1916 rebellion. As long as the British Army and their government have a presence here in Ireland, there will always be a small minority of the Irish people that will resist that.